Welcome, friends, to the Bride of Christ and Hebrew Nation. Uh, we've been working on the wedding parables and how we actually make a covenant with Christ to become his bride. And I'm starting over. Repetition is good, it helps us. And we've been looking at the seven seals. Started really with God's name last week. So we're going to look at the second seal, which is part of the wedding process. Because when they returned from Persia under Ezra and Nehemiah, in Nehemiah 9, verse 38, they said, because of everything we've considered during this Feast of Tabernacles, we renew the covenant and we sign and seal to it. The word seal fits with the seven seals that we see in Revelation 5, a book with seven seals, and the sixth chapter starts the first six seals. And there's a contextual link, I believe, to seals that we need that are topics to be restored by Elijah. When Christ said, "Beware the leaven of the Pharisees," in Matthew 16:11, he was referring to their doctrines in verse 12. And the next chapter, Matthew 17:11, he said, before he comes, Elias or Elijah must come first and restore all things. I'm seeing that in Revelation 11:3, when God gives power to his two witnesses, they have power for 1260 days, and they have the power to shut the heavens and turn water to blood. Shutting the heavens is what Elijah did, and water to blood is what Moses did in Egypt when the Nile turned to blood. So that's a lot of power, and I'm seeing the sequence of events, I believe, because God says he will not do anything without revealing it. That's Amos 3:7. And the next verse is a lion's roar, who will not fear? Well, what's that about? So we're going to start again with Yeshua's words in Matthew 24 when he said, and by the way, I think there's a misunderstanding in verse 14 where this gospel of the kingdom will be preached as a witness in all the world, and then the end will come. We have a period there that I don't think should be there because Greek did not have periods. And I'm going to say it again like I think it should be said. This gospel of the kingdom shall be preached as a witness into all the world, and then the end will come when you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by the prophet Daniel. And so what is that abomination that makes desolate? It's seen first in Daniel 8th chapter as a result of a little horn. But that little horn is the same little horn as in Daniel 7. It emerged out of the Roman Empire, the fourth beast, okay? As that Roman Empire fell apart, out of the head grew 10 horns, and one little horn uprooted 3 of them to become great. It was diverse, it says. Diverse because it's different. Different because it's a religious power. And growing out of the Roman Empire, guess what? It was the papacy, okay? Which also thought to change times and laws in verse 25. It's clearly identified with all the clues. The papacy is. And they made war with the saints. Conservative historians say that they martyred 50 to 100 million Christians, Protestants, during the Dark Ages, burning them at the stake, pulled apart by a rack. I hate to even mention these things as dreadful, but favorite authors said that in these magnificent cathedrals, some of the persecutions of the past will be reenacted in the end times for those who do not want to go along with their false worship in the end time, which in Hebrew Nation we understand would be Sunday instead of Sabbath, okay? Because Sabbath is God gave it from the beginning as a memorial to creation, and he's never changed it. And the big blind smokescreen is the Lord's Day, but it's really Day of the Lord for the end times, a reference to that. The lie that many Christians believe was that the early Christians kept the Lord's Day. But if you go to the book of Acts, there's only one reference to the first day of the week as opposed to the Sabbath, which is mentioned 9 times. 3 of them mention it as every Sabbath, when they were in the synagogue preaching, teaching Paul, etc. So no basis for Sunday, the day of sun worship, for the pagans. And when it says that they changed the Sabbaths, in Ezekiel 20th chapter, it's Sabbaths with an S, where it's not only seventh day Sabbath, but the annual Sabbaths as well. From Leviticus 23rd chapter, they are called feast days. Why? Because I didn't understand that as a feast day first, but they would go down to Jerusalem for Passover week, and they would kill a lamb and have a feast. Okay, but it was also a feast intellectually, because they would learn about the Lamb of God and teachings. But they somehow, the Jews couldn't count, or didn't count, the sevens for the 70 weeks of years until Messiah, and they missed that. They could have known that he was to be anointed in 27 A.D. if they had counted the sevens from 457 B.C. So anyway, sad mistake, and Yeshua said, when you see the gospel of the kingdom will be preached into all the world, then the end will come. When you see the abomination, what is that? I believe it was when Rome came to Congress in 2015. That was not a single isolated sign, but a cluster of signs, because there was gay marriage in the Supreme Court. Okay, bad idea. It's an abomination also. Seen in Leviticus 18th chapter, verse 22, to lie mankind with mankind as with womankind is abomination. So also we had in 2015 the peace and safety. I like Paul's reference in 1 Thessalonians 5, 1-3, for, as you recall, the disciples had asked, are you going to restore the kingdom to Israel? And Christ's sad warning was, it's not for you to know the times or seasons. But 1 Thessalonians 5:1 says, of the times and seasons, brethren, which is when the kingdom comes, as Christ referred to it, you have no need that I write, for you know perfectly. For the day of the Lord so comes as a thief in the night. Well, how does that tell us? It tells us a end time period that's going to be like night of the Lord in Egypt. When God executed judgment in Egypt, he said it was night of the Lord. The execution of judgment was Exodus 12:12. He said, I will execute judgment. And night of the Lord in verse 42. And so day of the Lord is the end time extension of that judgment, and it will be similar. God came as a thief in the night. Nobody saw God, but the end time day of the Lord will also be as a thief, because Christ will come as a thief in the night. I believe it says, Revelation 3:3, if you don't watch, I'll come as a thief. Well, watching was only done at Passover. So that's helps identify, and Luke's parable, wedding parable, has three links to Passover. It was, let your loins be girded. That the rule of first use in Revelation 1:11 would indicate that the what am I talking about here? The loins girded was first found at Passover, and also when Christ said watch, it was, that word was only connected. The only light in the year they were required to watch. They were to eat the Passover lamb and leave nothing till morning in Exodus 12 verse 10, and the loins girded was verse 11. And then Christ said, blessed is that servant whom his Lord finds watching when he comes. He will gird himself, make them sit down to eat, and serve them. That's what he did on the eve of Passover in Matthew. Well, actually, most of the Gospels have the Last Supper account. But God said to watch. And by the way, I think they sadly missed that their ability when, James and John came to Yeshua wanting to be on the left and right in the kingdom with their mother. And he said, well, being on the left and right is not mine to give, but are you able to drink of the cup I drink of? And they said, yes. And the last night he gave it to them in the Last Supper. But 2 hours later, approximately, he said, watch and pray with me. he was he was so concerned that the one account, I think it was Luke's, said that he sweat as it were great drops of blood. Uh, Medically, I have never seen that. I'm a physician, retired, never seen that much stress. But I understood and was taught that under severe stress, the blood vessels can ooze blood. Okay, so Christ was under real stress, and he would have been reassured to find his disciples praying with him and for him. But he comes to them and finds them sleeping. He said, "Could you not watch 1 hour?" Well, they didn't. And sadly, in my opinion, they lost what they could have had. I'm going to expect, this is speculation now, but I believe if they had watched and prayed and been strengthened as Christ was by the Spirit, they could have and should have said, when the Romans came with the Jews to take him capture, the disciples should have said, "We're going to trial with you." And when they went, they should have, as the Jews accused him of tearing down the temple and building again in 3 days, they said, "You're going to do that?" They said, "No, he's talking about his body. Come out Sunday morning, you'll see." Well, if they had had the spiritual grace and gift and strength to say it, the intestinal fortitude to say it, I believe Nicodemus and even themselves would not have been afraid or cowed by the Jews. They would have been bold to say, "You killed the Messiah and we saw him come from the grave." But they didn't do that. They hid in an upper room, and Pentecost came on 120 that were hiding. But if they had said it, and there were other witnesses, including the disciples, I believe Pentecost would have been the whole nation, or many keeping Pentecost, repenting for what they had done, and the gospel could have had a strong start with the whole nation, and the kingdom could have been there. The kingdom could have been initiated, but 120 were not enough for a kingdom. Kingdom does mean dominion of a king in us, but God wanted a whole group of people, not just people hiding and worried and fearful. So that's my point, that we can have it now, though. We can have the retake on it if we understand the prophecies for the end time. And I want to take you there. It's based partly on a musical number we hear in a couple months from now in December, the Messiah, Handel's Messiah. And it's great music. If you've never, it was my privilege to sing in it in high school or college, but I love the one oratorio that is quoting Haggai 2, that once a little while I'll shake the heavens and the earth, the sea, the dry land, all nations, and the desire of all nations will come. What's that desire of all nations? It's his kingdom. Okay, we would all like Christ to be part of Christ's kingdom, and so I believe it's connected to the shaking. I will shake the heavens and earth, the sea, the dry land, and that didn't happen either at Christ's first coming. It's for us. How do we get to that shaking the heavens and the earth? Well, again, we come back to Yeshua's clues from Matthew 24. When you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel, to flee, to get out of the cities, I believe, not just Jerusalem. Or early believers understood it was Jerusalem, and they fled and were spared the siege. But I believe it's in our time, get out of the cities because martial law is coming. And Christ's clues in Matthew 24 start in verse 37, when he said, "No man knows the day or hour, but as the days of Noah." And in the days of Noah, the Passover came the flood came with Passover timing, but in the second spring month, it had Passover. It was on the 17th day, but the 10th day was when they went into the ark, which was the time that the sacrifice was selected. When in Exodus 12 verse 3, they set aside a lamb on the 10th day, and people became the lamb or sacrifice on the 10th day when Noah entered, and they wouldn't go in. So that's how it had Passover timing. Well, I'm believing that the end time events are going to fit in with second Passover in May. And another example of the next parable after as the days of Noah is then shall two be in the field, one taken, the other left. I believe that's martial law. And if you're in the cities, I think it's going to be trouble. And the evil servant begins to smite his fellow servants. Then shall the kingdom be like 10 virgins. Well, those 10 virgins, 5 missed the wedding, and Christ said, watch, you don't know or you don't understand. It's like a man traveling to a far country. Travel was a provision for a late Passover, because if they couldn't get back in time for Passover, they were to keep it the second month. And so all of his closing parables actually can be shown to fit that timing. Even the goodman, if he'd have known, would have watched, not suffered his house to be broken. But the goodman, there's only one reference in the Old Testament, Proverbs 7, 19, and 20. A harlot is talking to a simple guy, and she says, the goodman's on a long journey. He's taking a bag of money, won't be back to the Yom Casey, or full moon. Well, full moon comes on Passover, but long journey is second Passover. And so that's that parable. And then the evil servant, then the 10 virgins. The evil servant has the same timing. Then shall it be like 10 virgins. And the 10 virgins are like a man traveling to a far country. The provision in 9:11 provision, Numbers 9, verse 10 and 11. If you're had contact with a dead body, as Noah did to bury Methuselah, or if you had on a long journey, keep the second. So half a dozen times, really, those are linked together for when end times are going to start. I think not with a flood, but with a flood of people coming into this country. I think, but the judgment even happens before that, and we're going to get to that right now. Christ said to understand the book of Daniel, and in the 8th chapter, there's a vision at the time of the end. The vision is of the ram and goat, which is a conflict. The ram is pushing from the Middle East. It's a Muslim ram, and angers the goat, who flies from the west and stomps a militant Muslim ram, breaking its horns. Well, the first horn already, the horns represent Medes and Persians, the kings of Medes and Persia, and that was Saddam, who is no longer with us, and I'm confident that Khomeini will not be around for another year. I believe that next spring, at second Passover, is when the earth will quake and the heavens shake, and we can be into end times, when also God is going to let go with, I believe, the great goat with the great horn could be Trump, because in Bible times the horns were cut off to make trumpets, and it makes the goat great in Daniel 8:8. I think Trump will do that. That was his motto, has been his motto. I don't like him as a person per se. It doesn't seem very much. His life does not seem much like Yeshua, but as a Christian, he's rough and rude with his words. But God used Nebuchadnezzar, who was later converted, and maybe Trump will be converted as well somehow. But I think he's enough biblical evidence for him as the great horn. And by the way, he was anointed on his right ear like a priest, or kings were also anointed. I don't know if they were anointed with blood, but the high priests were in Exodus 29, verse 20. So I'm seeing that also Trump is engraved on a coin in Israel as Cyrus II. Well, he hasn't had the chance to do what Cyrus I did yet, because Cyrus I, first in Isaiah 45, verse 1, God named Cyrus more than 100 years before he was born, told how he would conquer Babylon when 2 gates were left open. And Cyrus didn't know anything about that, but he did divert the river Euphrates into a reservoir, marched at night under that Babylon's wall to discover 2 gates left open. And when Daniel showed him his name in Isaiah 45:1 with 2 gates open, Cyrus was so impressed that God knew him. In fact, about 5 verses earlier, it says, I formed you in the womb. And it mentions the temple in the last verse of Isaiah 44th chapter. And so, let's see. Yeah, 44th chapter. So Cyrus did the thing right to let Israel go, helped return, and give them a donation for their temple. Well, if he helped them return, maybe in Revelation 12, where the woman impure, standing on the moon with a lunar understanding of the calendar, in verse 14, she's given two wings of a great eagle to fly to the wilderness. Well, the wilderness was where Israel went on the way to the promised land. And I don't know whether we go to Sinai, that wilderness or not, but the great people of the Bible did. Moses was called at Sinai to be God's man. And he took Israel back to Sinai for the covenant on Pentecost it was. And Elijah ran down there. And what doest thou here, Elijah? Well, he went for a blessing, I guess. And we know that Christ went 40 days, just like Elijah ran 40 days to the wilderness. Christ was 40 days in the wilderness, probably went down there to Sinai. And Paul also alludes to that in Galatians in the first chapter. So I think maybe we're going there. Anyway, bottom line is when, how. I think if you take the second Passover and you go to Pentecost, and you use, by the way, you have to use the lunar calendar to do that. The May, June, July, 30 days, 31, and all that, that won't work. When God shakes the heavens and the earth, the heavens are going to return to a 30-day month with 12 months in the year. And I will put a link or explain it sometime later. I guess I don't have a link now for this video. Maybe I will online. Go to my channel, ask for channel Richard Ruling, or Total Health rather, Total Health channel, and I hope you can find a link there. So if you go from Second Pentecost and you realize that Jerusalem has been destroyed by that shaking and also by Muslims that militantly took Jerusalem, there's going to be a decree to restore and build Jerusalem. And Daniel 9 verse 25 says, from a decree to restore and build Jerusalem to Messiah is 69 weeks. So, and this is not weeks of years, this is literal time, about a year and a half from Pentecost of 2025 to the ninth day, Haggai 2 verse 10, 18, and 20 refer to the ninth month and the 24th day when the foundation of God's third temple, not the ones that the Jews are going to make to kill lambs, but because the Lamb of God, Isaiah 53, has already been sacrificed and fulfilled that thing. We don't need to do that. And so, but count the 69 weeks from second Passover, you come to that date. And so I don't think anybody else is going to tell you that. This is new with me. I believe the Holy Spirit showed me this. And I believe that follow me on these. But it's also related to the covenant. And we didn't really mention much about the covenant at all. But the covenant is how we marry the bridegroom. And it's the wedding parables are about 144,000. They are virgins in Revelation 14:4. They have to be the wise virgins in the wedding in Matthew 25. And so we want to be the 144,000. We get to be ruler over all that he has in Luke 12:44, and or in Revelation 3 verse 21, sit with me on my throne. Ruler over all is sitting on the throne, and we can be on the left and right like James and John wanted to be. So thank you. See you again next week, and take a look at the website if you can, Total Health website or Richard Ruling website, and God bless you. Thank you for taking the time. Don't you enjoy this? This is music that from the Messiah, and that's also the one that has the Lord will shake the heavens and the earth. And Alleluia. That also means praise to him in every language. Hallel means praise. Uia, Ia Ua is the all-vowel name for God. We'll see you.